everyone. I'm Jo Brand. Nice to be talking to you today. Your first question, I'm interested in what you think the public view is of teachers and how they are portrayed both in the media and especially in comedy. I think what your attitude towards teachers is really kind of dependent on to some extent what your politics are, I suppose. I'm going to keep just to comedy, I think, because I think some people think teaching is kind of a hotbed of Marxist Leninism, and some people just think teachers are very hardworking people. I think there are so many different portrayals of teachers in comedy. And one programme which is not a comedy, but it is comical sometimes, which I think has really changed people's attitude towards teachers, are the two shows, Educating Essex and Educating Yorkshire. To me, with comedy, really, it doesn't matter that much unless it's wildly inaccurate, how accurate it is, as long as it's funny. And from my point of view, two of my favourite comedians are Greg Davis and Ramesh Ranganathan. Both of them were teachers, and both of them are hilarious, in my opinion. And I kind of wish I'd been taught by them because I'd like to have seen how they did it. Okay, right. The next question. What has made you laugh during lockdown? Well, lots of things, to be honest. Home slapstick. I fell down the stairs with a cup of tea yesterday, and we've got a mirror at the bottom of our stairs, so I saw myself, so that was quite good fun. That was some good comedy. In terms of things I've been watching, the people I particularly like at the moment are Jonathan Pye. And the other comic I really loved during lockdown is a woman called Sarah Cooper. And what she does is she lip syncs Donald Trump speeches, and it's really funny. But I can also see that he would be really irritated that a black woman is taking the mick out of him. Okay, what have I got next? How are you managing with lockdown? Are you bored yet? No. What did I want to do while I was at school? Hardly original, but appropriate. I wanted to be a doctor or the Prime Minister or a comedian. And I think probably some people would argue I'm not any of those. This is quite a long question about baking, so I'm going to précis it. Basically, what's my favourite cake bin that I've baked during lockdown? Sorry to disappoint you, Julie, if you like baking, but I haven't baked a cake during lockdown. And the reason I haven't is because I don't really like baking. And I don't particularly like cakes that much either. The sort of cake I do like, which I'm quite embarrassed to admit, is I like one of those sort of ersatz kind of, children's party cakes that are full of E numbers and that would help you to see in the dark. I will just tell you very briefly a quick story, because my husband always buys me like really posh patisserie cakes for my birthday. I don't really like them because, well, the worst thing is though they've got a sort of layer on top of them that always looks like clear phlegm to me. I've no idea what it is, and it always puts me off. So for once, a couple of years ago, I decided to buy my own cake, and I went down to the local supermarket, ordered one, and they said it was a caterpillar. It was like green and yellow. And they said, do you want to put an inscription on it? So I thought, for a laugh, because I was having a few friends around, those were the days, I put, just to make them laugh, and it was I think it was my 58th birthday or whatever it was. You are a very old woman and you're going to die soon. I don't know why I thought that's hilarious. I just did. And I went back to collect the cake after I'd ordered it a couple of weeks later. I opened the box to check it was my cake. It was my cake. It was the yellow and green caterpillar. But on it, it said, "Happy Retirement, Wendy." And still to this day, I don't know whether Wendy got my inscription or not. And I hope she didn't, because hers obviously said, "You're a very old woman and you're going to die soon." So if anyone ever comes across Wendy, will you apologise, or will someone let me know? Can I share with members some funny experiences during lockdown? Well, I have done quite a lot of online charity quizzes during lockdown, and they have really been good fun. And what happens is that obviously you get sort of chats, on the side of the page, and people kind of will send you messages and say, "Can you give a shout out to my grandma," and all that sort of thing. But one particular one I did a few weeks ago, what they tried to do is they tried to sneak rude parts of the body, or rude words past me disguised as people's names. I mean, I prided myself that I'd actually weeded all of them out, until I fell at the last hurdle, and I said, "I'd like to give a shout out to Martha Farquhar," which obviously is, I'm not going to say what it was meant to be, but obviously I think you can all work out what it was meant to be. And I think they were very pleased that they got one past me. Okay, moving on. Do you have any tips on how to cheer up and add fun to our school virtual book club? We have had them baking already. Oh Lord, I kind of live in fear of this sort of question, because I'm not really a particularly fun sort of person. I would try and kind of personalize things a bit more, or ask some questions, things like, if you were making a film of this book, who would you choose to be the main characters? Or can you sum this book up in one tweet? Or who would you most like to kill in this book? Where has humour gone in the world of education? I personally think, Rob, from the stories I hear, that there are ways around that. And so I hope you find them. What's your fondest memory from your school days? Well, actually, my fond memories from my school days are all kind of very generalised, like having a laugh with my friends. So I just want to use this time briefly to say I think traumatic memories from school are really important, because I have quite a few, and these stay with you forever. And obviously my school experience, I was at primary school in the 60s. First of all, in my primary school, one day the headmaster got very angry with a boy, and he asked him to go and get his shoe bag with his little PE kit off his peg. The boy brought it back, and the headmaster swung it round his head and as hard as he could, and then hit the kid round the head with it. As a pupil, I was fairly well behaved, but the headmistress didn't really like me. And one day I put my hand up twice in one morning, asked to go to the toilet, and in front of everyone she said, "You've asked twice, why don't you just start bringing a potty into school?" And of course the whole class laughed and thought it was hilarious, and I felt really humiliated by that, and stopped asking to go completely, and then got a terrible infection. No, I didn't, I'm making that up. What is your advice for staying positive when in isolation? Well, I would say from my own personal point of view, it is just realising, which I think is quite hard for a lot of us to do, how lucky I am compared to loads of other people. I live in a nice house, I've got a garden, and I'm very aware that a lot of people don't have nice houses, and they're on the 20th floor of tower blocks. So if I can't keep positive with what I've got, well, I deserve to be, I don't know, put in prison. And I would say for other people, one of my mottos in life, really, and I think it applies to my job very strongly, but it applies to lots of other people's lives as well, is lower your expectations. Because I think one thing that happens with people is they just expect far too much. And when it doesn't happen for them, they're disappointed and it makes them miserable. I know a lot of comedians who wanted to be far further along success-wise in their lives at certain points. And actually, they were, objectively speaking, doing really well. And they were really fed up all the time because they hadn't landed that American sitcom, or, you know, they hadn't done a world tour. Whereas with me, I didn't really have a plan. And so anything that came along was a bonus. And, you know, to still be saying that after 32 years, say no more in some ways. The question is, any tips for a head teacher trying to keep staff spirits up in challenging times? Just to be as relentlessly positive as you can, but not to the point where you annoy everyone with your positivity. So that position is somewhere in between, like Tigger. Again, it's a very long question. Do you remember any situations whereby you had to metaphorically lie back and think of England? Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that was a metaphor. Brings to my mind is when I was a student nurse, I did 6 months on a ward for the elderly, and we used to do quite a lot of community visits. And one day I was sent home for the day with an elderly woman, and I had to kind of assess her skills at home. You know, was she safe? Was she aware of kind of, you know, leaving gas rings on? Could she make a cup of tea? Could she make a kind of simple meal? It was all that sort of thing. Anyway, I was dropped off by the minibus driver at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he was due to pick me up at 3. No mobile phones or anything in that day. In those days, she didn't have a phone in her flat or anything. Anyway, we got into her flat. Her problem was she had an illness which made her very paranoid. So as soon as we got into her flat, she just pushed loads of furniture up against the door as if we were under siege. And I should add at this point that she was built like a brick. Well, you know what I mean. She was in her mid-70s, but she was like really tough as old boots, kind of, you know, Cockney. And so I said to her, you know, don't push all the furniture up against the door. And I started to move it. And she lamped me so hard in the face that I nearly fell over, and it really, really hurt. And so I said, oh, okay. All right, I won't do that anymore. And basically, I had to stay there for 6 hours with her, trying not to get assaulted again. And it wasn't easy, but I just had to carry on and fill the time and think of things to do. And eventually, the minibus driver, who she knew, came back, knocked at the door. She told him to F off. And he said to me, let me in the window. So I managed to open the window with her just kind of punching me from behind. Tell me the truth about cake. What can I tell you? I've already said I don't really like cake very much. And to me, there's no truth about cake. I don't really know why people like baking. I can't work it out. My husband's quite good at cooking and baking. And he has tried to get me interested. And one day he said, look, you know, I'll make a rhubarb crumble and you make the custard. I was like, oh, God, all right. Anyway, so off we went. And I think just for cliche's sake, he said to me, you know, I'm not going to put any more sugar in this because you're sweet enough. And I said, well, I'm not going to put any more corn flour in my custard because you're thick enough. Anyway, that's the way to keep a lovely relationship going. Well, that's a That's a very positive note to finish on, isn't it? And I would just say, finally, if any of you have teenagers, I think the thing to do with teenagers is to try not to get wound up by them, really. I know that's easier said than done. There's kind of a lot of sneering goes on, isn't there, with teenagers? And my second motto, apart from lower your expectations, is appreciate and enjoy the sneering. Because for me, it's kind of quite comedy in a way. I mean, I said to my daughter recently, she was talking about getting in touch with someone, and I said, "Oh, why don't you just pop them off an email?" And she went like that. And I went, "What?" She said, "Because I'm not 100 years old, Mum." Anyway, I thought that was hilarious. Thanks for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Bye.